What if I told you there was a punishment so terrifying, so unbelievably cruel, that it makes every other method of execution seem almost merciful by comparison? A form of torture so disturbing that its victims didn't just die, they deteriorated, trapped within their own bodies, fully aware of slow, agonizing decay. It sounds like a fever dream, doesn't it? For centuries, this method remained behind the dark curtain of history, spoken of only in hushed tones, its details too gruesome to dwell upon. It was designed not merely to kill, but to break a person completely, to turn them into something that could no longer be recognized as human. We're talking about the most disturbing punishment you have likely never heard of: Scaphism, also known as the boats. If you have a fascination for the darkest corners of history, get ready. What you are about to discover will both shake you and haunt your thoughts. But what exactly was Scaphism? Imagine this. You're trapped inside a wooden coffin, but this coffin isn't buried underground. Instead, it floats on the surface of a murky, stagnant body of water. Your arms, legs, and head stick out, exposed to the blistering sun. You are force-fed food and drink, but do not mistake this for mercy. No, this is a cold-blooded calculation to make the torture unbearable. What comes next is far worse than death itself. Are you ready? Then take a deep breath as we journey into one of history's darkest chapters. This nightmare was real. Scaphism, or the boats, originated in the Ancient Persian Empire and is believed to be one of the most brutal execution methods ever devised. It was a process where victims suffered for days, sometimes weeks, before their bodies finally gave up. But where does the term come from? The word comes from the Greek scaphe, meaning boat or hollowed-out vessel. The name gives us a clue to the mechanism. The condemned was placed between two wooden boats or inside a hollowed-out log, left to die in the most excruciating way imaginable. Although the name we use is Greek, the practice is attributed to the Achaemenid Persians, one of the most powerful empires of the ancient world. Why choose something so extreme? Scaphism wasn't just about killing, it was about making an example. It was a message and a warning. Betray the empire, and your suffering will become legendary. The most famous account comes from Plutarch, the Greek historian, in his life of Artaxerxes. He describes a Persian soldier named Mithridates, who was sentenced to this fate after committing treason. Mithridates was a soldier who unwittingly sealed his fate by boasting about a deed that should have remained a secret. In 401 BC, King Artaxerxes II fought his rebellious brother, Cyrus the Younger. Cyrus was killed, but Mithridates, in a moment of arrogance, claimed responsibility for the fatal blow. This boast was a grave mistake. The king had declared that he had slain his brother. The idea that a mere soldier had done so undermined the king's authority. To make an example of him, Artaxerxes ordered that Mithridates be executed by Scaphism. Plutarch describes how he was confined within the boats, force-fed milk and honey, and left to decay while insects consumed him. His suffering reportedly lasted 17 days. However, there is an unsettling aspect to this story. This is the only detailed written record that has survived. No Persian sources describe it, leading historians to debate whether Plutarch exaggerated for dramatic effect. Greek historians were known for depicting their Persian rivals as barbaric. So, was Scaphism real or anti-Persian propaganda? The truth is lost to the mist of time, but what makes Scaphism so terrifying is that whether fully real or exaggerated, it was possible. The mere idea that the human mind could invent something so twisted is disturbing enough. Now let's face the true horror of the process. The first step was stripping the victim of everything: their clothes, their dignity, their humanity. Naked and vulnerable, They were sealed inside the wooden trap. Head, arms, and legs exposed, torso tightly imprisoned, no room to move, no way to escape. Once the boats were sealed, the condemned became a helpless spectator to their own demise. At first they might have hoped for a swift execution, a blade, a sword, but Scaphism was not about a quick death. It was about pushing the limits of human endurance until the body surrendered to decay, disease, and despair. The next step was even more disturbing. The executioners would bring bowls of milk and honey and force-feed the victim. They had no choice. The sticky mixture was poured down their throats until their stomachs were painfully bloated. This wasn't nourishment. It was a weapon. Milk and honey, when consumed in such excesses, caused severe diarrhea. Since the victim was trapped inside the wooden enclosure, they had no way to clean themselves. Within hours, they were lying in their own filth, creating the perfect breeding ground for bacteria, and the executioners repeated this daily, ensuring the victim didn't starve too quickly. They needed them alive for the true horror to unfold. As the victim lay in their own waste, the insects arrived. The executioners would smear more honey over the victim's exposed face, neck, and limbs. The sweet scent attracted flies, ants, wasps, and other vermin. They would crawl over the helpless body, biting and stinging. The more the victim struggled, the more they attracted. Then came the maggots. Flies laid eggs in the filth and opened sores. Soon writhing larvae burrowed into the skin, eating the victim alive. The condemned was fully conscious, feeling every movement, every bite. Infection set in, flesh turned black and rotted away. Yet the heart kept beating. Dehydration became another tormentor. Under the merciless sun, skin blistered and cracked. At night, freezing temperatures brought violent shivering. They begged for water, but received only more milk and honey, enough to keep them breathing, but never enough to quench their thirst. For those placed near swamps, rats and other rodents would join the feast, gnawing on fingers and toes, sometimes while the victim watched, powerless to stop it. After days, sometimes weeks, the body would finally shut down. Septic shock, exhaustion, and massive infection took their toll. Finally, after untold agony, the victim slipped into death's embrace. But the sight that remained was a grotesque, barely recognizable corpse, flesh eaten away, bones peeking through rotten skin. This punishment wasn't just about physical pain, it was psychological warfare. The Persian Empire was built on order and absolute loyalty. Treason was not just a crime, it was a threat to the survival of the state. Scaphism served as the ultimate deterrent. It told the world, defy the king, and you will not just die, you will suffer in ways no human should endure. Even centuries later, echoes of this horror resurfaced. The Byzantine chronicler Joannes Zonaras revived the story in the 12th century, ensuring the nightmare would not be forgotten. He emphasized the psychological terror, knowing you're dying, smelling your own decay, hearing the buzz of the flies, yet being utterly unable to do anything about it. Was it really that bad? Yes, it was a punishment that stripped away the soul before taking the life. While the Romans perfected crucifixion to instill fear, even that allowed for a somewhat human death. Scaphism turned a person into a breeding ground for vermin, letting nature consume them from the inside out. The concept of death by nature echoes through history, from the bamboo cages of medieval Japan to the horrific experiments of Unit 731 in World War II. But nothing quite matches the calculated slow-motion nightmare of the boats. Scaphism remains the ultimate horror story of antiquity, a punishment beyond death, a descent into a fate worse than anything the world had ever seen. And for those who knew of it, it remained the definition of hell on earth.